The opera ghost really existed. He was not, as was long believed, a creature of the imagination of artists. The superstitions of managers are a product of the absurd and impressionable brains of young ladies of the ballet, their mothers, the box keepers, the cloakroom attendants, or the concierge. Yes, he existed in flesh and blood, although he assumed the complete appearance of a real phantom, that is to say, a spectral shade. So spoke Gaston Leroux. Whenever and wherever Gothic horror and fiction is discussed, Dracula is the first to be mentioned. The next person will chime in with Frankenstein, maybe the works of Edgar Allen Poe. But inevitably, when it comes to the traditional mix of the dank and the dark, the romantic and repulsive, the melodramatic and the macabre, the phantom of the opera will loom large. Everyone knows the tropes. The masked monster at his organ is an image so burned into pop culture, it's instantly recognizable. But few seem to venture to the original text, and I aim to change that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I give you a legend over a century after its publication. I give you Leroux triumphant by way of the original tale. I give you... Gaston Leroux, born in 1868, was a young man of means, descending from King William II of England, son of William the Conqueror. Spending most of his youth rubbing elbows with royals and aristocrats, Leroux partied and gambled his way through his million-franc inheritance with a pomp and speed that only French aristocrats can buy. His newfound financial instability led him to being a reporter starting in 1890 in society and art criticism before becoming an international correspondent 3 years later, covering everything from natural disasters to wars all over the world. Though having written fiction in the past, Leroux started writing fiction full-time in 1907. His novel, The Mystery of the Yellow Room, being considered one of the best locked-room detective stories of its day, and introduced his running detective, Joseph Rouletabille. Somehow, Rouletabille has not done battle with Arsène Lupin, and someone needs to fix that. Leroux continued to write mystery fiction until his death in 1927, by which time he had left his mark in his home country, being made a knight in France's Legion of Honor, and a favorite amongst readers and fans of the genre. However, the work he will forever be remembered for was serialized in the newspaper La Calo from 1909 to 1910, and reached the English-speaking world the next year. Collected under one volume as The Phantom of the Opera, the book's legacy would be solidified in 1925 with Universal Pictures creating its adaptation starring silent film legend Lon Chaney, whose self-applied makeup became inseparable from the character. The other half of this horrifying handshake is Andrew Lloyd Webber's 1986 musical adaptation, whose music and story keep the character alive as one of the longest continuously running stage productions of all time. Now, the crew probably notices I haven't said much about the book itself yet. What's interesting is that the cultural identity of the Phantom is so wrapped up in the adaptations of the original novel that said text is the last thing that people think of at all. When I told people I was reading the novel, a not uncommon reply was, "There's a book?" The long shadows of Lon Chaney and Michael Crawford seems to have all but covered Leroux. The story has been adapted time and time again, with there being nearly 24 full-length major film versions of the story, more on television, more in print, and yet one thing remains clear throughout all of it. There is yet to be a definitive and faithful adaptation of the novel, and you're missing out on a lot of incredible elements. But enough preamble. What's the story? The Paris Opera House is under new management. An enormous labyrinthium building, the leaving managers inform their successors of some unusual practices of the theater. They took the master keys from our hands, stared at them for a moment, and advised us to have new locks made with the greatest secrecy. for the rooms, closets, and presses that we might wish to have hermetically closed. They said this so funnily that we began to laugh and to ask if there were thieves at the opera. They replied that there was something worse, which was the ghost. The place is reportedly haunted by a being only referred to as the opera ghost. A joke to some, but others take it deathly serious, workers of the opera heeding the shade's demands. Seeing the ghost and surviving to tell the tale, Chief Scene Shifter Joseph Bacot describes his visage. He is extraordinarily thin. His dress coat hangs on a skeleton frame. His eyes are so deep that you can hardly see the fixed pupils. You just see two big black holes as in a dead man's skull. His skin, which is stretched across his bones like a drum head, is not white, but a nasty yellow. His nose is so little worth talking about that you can't see its side face, and the absence of that nose is a horrible thing to look at. All the hair he has is 3 or 4 long, dark locks on his forehead and behind his ears. This chief scene shifter was a serious, sober, steady man, very slow at imagining things. His words were received with interest and amazement. His story costs him his life, as he is found hanging from the rafters days later. The other talk of the opera is the sudden, incredible performance of one Christine Daae, an understudy and dancer thrust into the spotlight when leading soprano Carlotta becomes mysteriously ill and is unable to perform her role in a performance of Faust. Christine's previously middling voice brings the audience to near raving with its newfound beauty and power. Listening in the audience is childhood friend Raoul, who is taken more than anyone by her dulcet tones. Going to meet her at her dressing room and being shown the door rather abruptly, Raoul waits outside and makes a rather shocking discovery. Hardly breathing, he went up to the dressing room and with his ear to the door to catch her reply, he prepared to knock, but his hand dropped. He had heard a man's voice in the dressing room saying in a curious, masterful tone, "Christine, you must love me." And Christine's voice, infinitely sad and trembling, as though accompanied by tears, replied, "How can you talk like that, when I sing only for you?" Raoul leaned against the panel to ease his pain. His heart, which had seemed gone forever, returned to his breast and was throbbing loudly. "Are you very tired?" "Oh, tonight I gave you my soul and I am dead." "Your soul is a beautiful thing, child, and I thank you. No emperor ever received so fair a gift. The angels wept tonight." Christine is in someone's sway, and that someone has started making demands of the new management. "My dear managers, so it is to be war between us. If you still care for peace, here is my ultimatum. It consists of 4 following conditions. 1. You must give me back my private box, and I wish it to be at my free disposal from henceforward. 2. The part of Margarita shall be sung this evening by Christine Daae. Never mind about Carlotta, she will be ill. 3. I absolutely insist upon the good and loyal services of Madame Giry, my box keeper, whom you will reinstate in her functions forthwith. 4. Let me know by a letter handed to Madame Giry, who will see that it reaches me, that you accept, as your predecessors did, the conditions in my memorandum book relating to my monthly allowance. I will inform you later how you are to pay me. If you refuse, you will give Faust tonight in a house with a curse on it. Take my advice, and be warned in time, OG. Raoul, attempting to ascertain his rival's identity, meets Christine on the coast, and she seems equal parts indignant, avoidant, and terrified. Christine sees Raoul's arm and clutches it with a strength which no one would have suspected in so frail a creature. "Then you were listening behind the door?" "Yes, because I love you, and I heard everything." "You heard what?" And the young girl, becoming strangely calm, released Raoul's arm. "He said to you, 'Christine, you must love me.'" At these words, a deathly pallor spread over Christine's face. Dark rings formed round her eyes. She staggered and seemed on the point of swooning. Raoul darted forward with arms outstretched, but Christine had overcome her passing faintness and said in a low voice, Go on, tell me what you heard." At another loss to understand, Raoul answered, I heard him reply, when you said you had given him your soul is a beautiful thing, child, and I thank you. No emperor ever received so fair a gift. The angels wept tonight. Christine carried her hand to her heart, a prey to indescribable emotion. Her eyes stared before her like a madwoman's. Raoul was terror-stricken, but suddenly Christine's eyes moistened and 2 great tears trickled down like pearls, down her ivory cheeks. Christine! Raoul! The young man tried to take her in his arms, but she escaped and fled in great disorder. Her patron and teacher, she claims, is sent by heaven, a final gift from her dead father. To her, a new voice. To him, her undying devotion. When the managers do not heed the ghost's requests, tragedy strikes Faust. Carlotta flung herself into the part without restraint or modesty, and her debut with Faust seemed about to bring her new success when suddenly a terrible thing happened. Carlotta croaked like a toad. There was consternation on Carlotta's face, a consternation on the faces of the audience. The 2 managers in their box could not suppress an exclamation of horror. Meanwhile, in box 5, Moncharmin and Richard had turned very pale. This extraordinary and inexplicable incident filled them with dread. They had felt his breath. Yes, the ghost was here, around them, behind them, beside them. They felt his presence without seeing him. They heard his breath close, close, close to them. They were sure that there were 3 people in the box, and they trembled. At last, they distinctly heard his voice in their right ears. The impossible voice, the mouthless voice saying, She is singing tonight to bring the chandelier down. With one accord, they raised their eyes to the ceiling and uttered a terrible cry. The chandelier, the immense mass of the chandelier was slipping down, coming toward them at the call of the fiendish voice. Released from its hook, it plunged from the ceiling and came smashing into the middle of the stalls, amid 1,000 shouts of terror. A wild rush for the doors followed. And Christine disappears for the first time. Her angel, his plans, and his obsessions are only beginning. The gothic atmosphere of death, decay, the macabre, and the mystic are on full display. Leroux leans on his reporter roots by presenting the whole story as a factual retelling of actual events, with the book's introduction detailing his journey to prove the ghost's existence. Leroux presents excerpts from police interviews, memoirs, news reports, and his own interviews as absolute fact, using footnotes along the way to clarify certain exact statements made in his accounts. M. Pedro Galehard has himself told me that he created a few additional posts as door shutters for an old stage carpenter's whom he was unwilling to dismiss from the services of the opera. What further boosts this angle is the very real location and history of the opera house, with the chandelier incident actually happening in 1896 after fire brought down mid-performance onto the audience. This combined with the catacombs of the opera house, stories of the large water cistern being an underground lake, and the rumored use of a real corpse on stage in an 1841 performance all lend some strange credibility to the tale. Though I don't think anyone bought it as a true story, the rumors of ghosts in the opera house existed long before Leroux came along. And I'm sure people checked over their shoulders probably a little more after he wrote about his ghost. My copy does give away the game a little bit by including an article from 1879 about the opera house, telling readers that it is in fact a real place, and not something out of Leroux's imagination, softly implying that the rest of it is, in fact, from his imagination. What is notable about this copy is that it was released in 1925, coinciding with the Universal film's release. Both turn 100 this year. As you can see, my copy is a little ragged, but it was much worse when I first got it, with it threatening to fall apart if it was handled too much. In an effort to save it, I brought it to my friend Amanda over at Deloria Designs to do some surgery. Through her efforts, its prose, illustrations, and photos will hopefully be enjoyed for another 100 years. What we can pray will also stand the test of time is the film it was released to coincide with. When I discovered that the original premiere date of September 6th landed on a Saturday this year for its 100th anniversary, I jumped at the chance to celebrate. Myself and my team assembled a formal screening event. 70 guests in their finest evening wear got to see the silent classic in all of its glory, the way it should be. Screening this 16mm copy, and accompanied by a modification of the original score performed by award-winning pianist Mila Bilikova, it felt in some small way like we were back in time. It will be a night to remember. What makes the Lon Chaney film that much better as an adaptation is that it gets most of the material right, while losing some of the complexity to the narrative due to the adaptation and the limitations of title cards. Our other big adaptation, Weber's musical, does not fare as well in that department. This is best exemplified in characters. Christine suffers the least in adaptations. The book highlights her as being young, emotionally fragile, and in a place of consistent grief after the passing of her father. Her passion and love of music was so wrapped up in him that when he passed, the spark was gone. So when the Phantom appears as the angel of music that was promised, her guiding light is returned to her, and she's able to come back into the theater as a whole performer again. The cracks begin to show when demands are made of her. She does show bravery in contacting Raoul to meet her in secret at the masquerade, in defiance of the Phantom, and in facing his wrath later in the catacombs. While being in need of saving, she shows a courage not afforded to her counterparts on screen. Leroux also highlights Christine's kindness, even when she's repulsed by Eric, understanding that she's being manipulated. She can't help but feel pity for this deformed, desperate man. The 25 and musical versions leave all of this largely intact, but I feel her strength is minimized slightly in both versions. The first in depriving her of the negotiation of the final act, and the second to emphasize the love story and to keep her from outright defying Eric due to Weber siding with him as a romantic lead. Raoul typically changes an adaptation to make him a stronger adversary and suitor. The Raoul presented in the novel is as young as Christine, both of them being around 20-21. He's emotional and impulsive, a boy raised largely by his aunt and sisters who came into his more masculine pursuits later on. He's described as having more of a feminine shyness, manners, and charm. Raoul is a young man in the romantic tradition. His older brother Philip, the more traditional leading man, is strong and brash, while possessing more of a manly charm, contrasting with Raoul's more thoughtful and sentimental demeanor. His emotional volatility and tender heart cause him to lash out at Christine when he's spurned and ignored when she's under the Phantom's spell. "Oh, I hate him. And you, Christine, tell me, do you hate him too?" No, of course not. Why, you love him. Your fear, your terror, all of that is just love, and love of the most exquisite kind, the kind which people do not admit even to themselves. The kind that gives you a thrill when you think of it. Picture it, a man who lives in a palace underground. Then you want me to go back there? Take care, Raoul. I have told you I should never return. There was an appalling silence between the three of them, the two who spoke, and the shadow that listened behind them. Before answering that, I should like to know with what feelings he inspires you, since you do not hate him. With horror. That is the terrible thing about it. He fills me with horror and I do not hate him. How can I hate him, Raoul? Think of Eric at my feet. In the house on the lake underground, he accuses himself, he curses himself, he implores my forgiveness. He confesses his cheat. He loves me. He lays at my feet in immense and tragic love. Carried off for love. This doesn't make Raoul a fop by any means. He pursues Christine and unravels the mystery of her patron largely on his own, and is a man of action when it comes to what's around him. But what the book takes strides to highlight is that Raoul is young, inexperienced, and not all that bright when it comes to matters involving Christine. The crushing power and machinations of Eric overwhelms the young lovers easily, and Raoul, despite fire and zeal, isn't much of a hindrance in the face of a man who can outmaneuver his best efforts. I ran up. The shadow had already pushed open the door and entered the church, but I was quicker than the shadow, and caught hold of the corner of its cloak. At that moment, we were just in front of the high altar, and the moonbeams fell straight upon us through the stained-glassed windows of the apse. As I did not let go of the cloak, the shadow turned round, and I saw a terrible death's head, which darted a look at me from a pair of scorching eyes. It felt as if I were face to face with Satan, and in the presence of this unearthly apparition my heart gave way, my courage failed me, and I remembered nothing more until I recovered consciousness at the setting sun. The 25 film makes Raoul more of a traditional leading man, while also keeping the beats the same. Raoul is a bit older, a little less emotional, but largely follows the path of his book counterpart. The more dominant portrayal, and the one that carries into pop culture, is that Philippe is usually cut in adaptation, and Raoul is toughened up a bit. There is no direct confrontation between Raoul and the Phantom in the novel, but that's often changed to create a love triangle. Who will Christine choose, the tortured, scarred artist, or the manly, handsome count? This isn't the dynamic of the book. Raoul isn't the Phantom's rival as much as he is a casualty of the Phantom's influence over Christine. They are both flies in the dark web beneath the opera house. The strength on the side of light in the novel is added by someone you've probably never heard of. I love tropes in fiction. Sometimes they can be annoying or cliché or removing tension or fun from a narrative, but some of them I can't help but love. While I'm sure Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces or Jung's archetypes have a more universal and philosophical name for the trope, Leroux's inclusion of the man known as the Persian gives the tale something I never knew I wanted or needed in Phantom of the Opera. He's Eric's Van Helsing. The man who steps into the middle of chaos with answers, a plan, and the unflappable will to carry it out is something I never get tired of. Its variations can be as classic as Stoker's Doctor, as cynical as Carpenter's Dr. Loomis, or as genre-bending as Morell's Colonel Troutman. But the central idea remains. Our heroes now have a fighting chance in the face of an overwhelming adversary. Though appearing earlier in the novel, the Persian fully strides into the story when Raoul is in danger of charging into the catacombs after Christine and Eric himself, where he would surely be dispatched with the ease that Eric has overtaken all of his previous victims. "How well you know the opera, sir." "Not so well as he does," said the Persian modestly. And he pushed the young man into Christine's dressing room, which was as Raoul had left it a few minutes earlier. Closing the door, the Persian went to a very thin partition that separated the dressing room from a big lumber room next to it. He listened, and then coughed loudly. There was a sound of someone stirring in the lumber room, and a few seconds later, a finger tapped at the door. "Come in." A man entered, also wearing an astrakhan cap, and dressed in a long overcoat. He bowed and took a richly carved case from under his coat and put it on the dressing table, bowed once again, and went to the door. "Did no one see you come in, Darius?" "No, master." "Let no one see you go out." The servant glanced down the passage and swiftly disappeared. The Persian opened the case. It contained a pair of long pistols. "When Christine Daae was carried off, sir, I sent word to my servant to bring me these pistols. I have had them a long time, and they can be relied upon." "Do you mean to fight a duel?" "It will certainly be a duel which we shall have to fight," said the other one, examining the priming of his pistols. "And what a duel!" Handing one of the pistols to Raoul, he added, "In this duel, we shall be 2-1, but you must be prepared for everything. You shall be fighting the most terrible adversary that you can imagine." I never knew I wanted this character. It gives Eric not only a sense of history, but also another who feels as Christine does. That sense of pity, showing that it's not just love, but common humanity and experience that causes people to see through the terrifying possessive actions of the Phantom to the desperate pain that serves as its engine. "But you love Christine Daae, do you not?" "I worship the ground she stands on. But you, sir, who do not love her, tell me why I find you ready to risk your life for her. You must certainly hate Eric." "No, sir," said the Persian sadly. "I do not hate him. If I hated him, he would long ago have ceased doing harm." "Has he done you harm?" "I have forgiven him the harm which he has done to me." "I don't understand. You treat him as a monster. You speak of his crime. He has done you harm, and I find in you the same inexplicable pity that drove me to despair when I saw it in Christine." The Persian did not reply. This very pity and mercy led the Persian, once a police captain in his homeland, to let Eric go free, saving him from the gallows. And while that pity remains, mercy must be cast aside to end Eric's reign of terror. The Persian serves several purposes, elevating the story as he goes. He gives Raoul a fighting chance against Eric, along with raising the stakes when even he feels he may be at wit's end in the midst of the Phantom's dreaded torture chamber. He humanizes Eric by giving him another connection to the world outside of Christine. He serves as a witness in Leroux's expose-style narrative, as the principal three characters are unavailable at the time of his investigation. And he fulfills a favorite archetype of mine. So, how many adaptations feature this character? A major player for the last third of the book. 2. 25. He doesn't get the label of the Persian, he's reduced to simply a detective who's been tracking Eric for a while. Both more than likely limitations of the cards and pace, but he's there, fez and all, and right there alongside Raoul as they charge into the catacombs. And a 1988 animated film that's a bit truncated, but largely faithful to the original novel. 2 of the 24 we have. The rat catcher, who is in one scene and serves as a weird scare and possible misdirection, has a more prominent place in adaptation than the Persian. So why cut him? Why excise the Persian? I have to assume it's to make Raoul look stronger, and more like a proper rival to the Phantom, and to streamline the ending scenes to the principal three characters. In Weber's version, Madame Geary, the boxkeeper and one of the few members of the opera house who has more direct contact with the ghost, is given the knowledge of Eric's backstory and serves as an advocate for him, changing her from yet another who the Phantom lies to and manipulates to help him into a bona fide servant, possibly distanced lover, who turns on Eric when Christine is taken. Raoul is a strong rival to Eric in this version, so he doesn't need any help. The backstory is sort of delivered, and it gets Raoul to face the music. While it works, I feel it robs the story of some complexity and cuts a character that I like. This isn't Tom Bombadil being cut. This is Gandalf being reduced to some guy telling Frodo about the ring and saying good luck before exiting the story. Does the story still work? Does the ring get to Mount Doom? Sure, maybe, but are we lesser for it? Yes.
I think there's something evil in this theater, Christine. Something or someone trying to stop the opera from ever being performed.
And so we reach the big man himself. The Phantom of the book is pretty firmly human. Being a master of escape and ventriloquism, he's able to seemingly disappear and reappear without much effort, and be in places where he's not by throwing his voice.
Here, I raise my mask a little. Oh, only a little. You see my lips. Such lips as I have. They're not moving. My mouth is closed. Such mouth as I have, and yet you hear my voice. Where will you have it? In your left ear. In your right ear. In the table. In those little ebony boxes on the mantelpiece. Crack. Here it is in the leather bag. What does it say? I'm a little bag of life and death. And now crack. It is in Carlotta's throat. Carlotta's crystal throat as I live. What does it say? It says, it is I, Mr. Toad. It is I singing. And now crack. It is on the chair in the ghost's box. It says, Madame Carlotta is singing tonight to bring the chandelier down. It was everywhere. Everywhere. It passed through the little invisible window, through the wall. It ran around us, between us. Eric was there, speaking to us. He made a movement as though to fling ourselves upon him, but already swifter, more fleeting than the voice of the echo. Eric's voice had leaped back behind the wall. It's also revealed that he was present when the opera house was being designed and built 20 years earlier, creating his lair and various escape routes with his knowledge of architecture, honed over the course of decades by serving despots and rulers in the Middle East. One such employer felt he knew too much, sentenced him to death, and brought him on a collision course with the Persian. His tricky nature earns him a fearsome nickname. He commands the walls, the doors, and the trapdoors. In my country, he is known by a name which means trapdoor lover.
If anyone in the crew knows Farsi, I would love to hear what that sounds like. Other adaptations, namely the Weber musical, play a little fast and loose on what Eric exactly is, having him disappear in flashes of light, throw fire, control nooses without touching them, and possibly having the power to hypnotize his victims. His ultimate seemingly impossible disappearance at the end of the show reinforces the question. The 25 version is closer to the novel, keeping Eric's actions within the realm of the possible, perhaps even making them less incredible than the novel, largely axing ventriloquism because, it's a silent movie. I would say where adaptations start to truly lose Eric is his outlook and composure. The guy obviously has a flair for the dramatic, and all of his emotions are big. When he's angry, he's furious, happy, elated, sad, bereft. The adaptations cover that well, but what the 25 version seems to get that few others do is his constant sense of the macabre. Eric sleeps in a coffin, is constantly talking about his death, sees Christine as his bride in death, knowing for certain that no one would love him in life. When he delivers the ultimatum to Christine to either love him and be his wife or die with him as he blows up the opera house during a performance, he fully expects her not to take him up on it. While Chaney's phantom is a glorious monster and dies like one amidst a torch-wielding mob, and Crawford's tall, dark, and mysterioso artist disappears before being taken by the same fate, Leroux's phantom is a moody and ultimately pathetic man, grasping for genuine love in a world where the only thing he was ever good at was hurting and manipulating people. When Raoul and the Persian are trapped in the torture chambers, Eric vacillates between threatening ultimatums of doom and practically groveling before Christine. Eric in the first half of the book could be described in one word: domineering. However, a different word could be used for the latter half: desperate. Whether the opera house goes up in smoke or not, he'll have his bride in death. Unlike the stage show, Eric's magnum opus, Don Juan Triumphant, will never be played.
Will you play me something out of your Don Juan Triumphant? I asked, thinking to please him. You must never ask me that. I will play you Mozart if you like, which will only make you weep. But my Don Juan Christine burns, and yet he is not struck by fire from heaven. You see, Christine, there is some music that is so terrible that it consumes all who approach it. Fortunately, you have not come to that music yet, for you would lose all of your pretty coloring and nobody would know you when you return to Paris. Let us sing something from the opera. Christine Daae. He spoke those last words as though he were flinging an insult at me.
Eric suffers in silence and will die in darkness. Until perhaps the biggest change from the book, namely, the ending. The encounter in the catacombs and the torture chamber comes from the Persian's written testimony of the events of that fateful night, ending when waters flood the chamber upon Christine's decision to marry Eric. This douses the explosives, but also threatens to drown Raoul and the Persian, his recollections ending when water goes over their heads. Leroux finds the Persian still living and retired all those years later, and he tells what happened next.
It seems that when he opened his eyes, the daroga found himself lying on a bed. M. de Cagny was on a sofa beside the wardrobe. An angel and a devil were watching over them. You are now saved, both of you, and soon I shall take you up to the surface of the earth to please my wife.
And through this favor to Christine, Eric balances the scales, paying back the Persian's mercy. He again loses consciousness and wakes up in his own home. Several days pass. Nothing is heard, and the police all but ignoring his story. And as he finishes penning his recollections of the events, a figure darkens his doorway.
I came back to Christine. She was waiting for me. Eric here rose solemnly. When he continued, but as he spoke, he was overcome by all of his former emotion, began to tremble like a leaf. Yes, she was waiting for me. waiting for me erect and alive, a real living bride, as she hoped to be saved. And when I came forward more timid than a little child, she did not run away. No, she stayed. She waited for me. I even believed, Daroga, that she put out her forehead a little, not much, just a little, like a living bride. And I kissed her. And she did not die. Oh, how good it is, Daroga, to kiss somebody on the forehead. You can't tell. My mother, Daroga, my poor unhappy mother, would never let me kiss her. She used to run away and throw me my mask. Nor any other woman, never. I fell to her feet crying, and I kissed her feet. I tore off my mask so as not to lose one of her tears. She did not run away, and she did not die. She remained alive, weeping over me, with me. We cried together. I have tasted all the happiness the world can offer. I heard her say, poor unhappy Eric.
Eric, weeping and redeemed by the love and pity of Christine, frees the captured Raoul and gives her a golden wedding band, making her promise to return it on the day of his death. He tells the Persian he will be returning articles that were Christine's, and when they are received, he is to publish his obituary. Leroux concludes with Eric's history, as told to him by the Persian, and tells us of a recent discovery in the Paris catacombs, a skeleton with a golden ring on his finger. Christine and Raoul are never heard of again, having fled north to Christine's homeland. Leroux noting they were last seen being married in a small, empty chapel. The young lovers live on, and Eric leaves this world knowing, if just for a fleeting moment, someone truly cared about him. I repeat, there has yet to be a fully, truly faithful adaptation of Gaston Leroux's novel. Though the 25 film gets close in many aspects, its ending and changes or excising of minor characters keep it from being true. The Weber musical is way off, with events, characters, and motivations being excised, mixed up, and added to in equal measure. While I enjoy the show, I even got to see it on Broadway a number of years ago before it ended its run, it's not the same story. I don't feel it has the same intentions as the book. Even scenes that are accurate, like the first summoning through the mirror, do better on the page because of the context. The song Eric sings is from Gounod's Romeo and Juliet, Christine's first show for the opera, and he specifically chooses The Wedding Night from Act 4, Scene 1. It's a duet. The repeated refrain of "Fate links thee to me forever and a day" literally requires both of them. He summons Christine not only through his voice, but also her own familiarity with the song, the context of the show itself, and the need of her voice to complete it. He calls to her without having to command her. Somehow, even when read on the page, it evokes a haunting atmosphere that I find much more effective. Unlike Dracula and Frankenstein, which are long and winding with dozens of locations and a big cast of characters, Leroux's novel is largely confined to the opera house itself, with only 2 or 3 exceptions, and the cast of notable characters is under 10, with only 4 being truly important. The only thing stopping the Phantom of the Opera from having a proper and faithful adaptation seems to be people just not wanting to. So the original novel languishes, and unlike the 2 aforementioned titans of gothic horror, there seems to be no rush or groundswell of people wanting to read it. There are issues I have with the book, namely the sections concerning the management of the opera and Eric's extortion of them, which I think are supposed to be funny, but came off as rather tedious. Because of the nature of the book being framed as an exposé piece, it does take about 20 pages to really get the ball rolling after explanations, scene settings, and backgrounds. At 350 pages in this edition, it is a smidge longer and written in a less breezy style than a lot of the books we've covered here. If you're looking strictly for that lean and mean men's action shot in the arm, this may not be what you're looking for. However, if you're looking to sink your teeth into a classic tale, maybe welcome that chill in the fall air with a bit of macabre flourish, you won't be disappointed. The book is dripping with atmosphere and is exciting and suspenseful, even if you do know the story. While the management scenes do lag a bit, the book remains a page-turner, and with it being a century old, the physical copies won't cost you much, and the digital ones won't cost you a dime. Not everyone needs antiques. The legacy of Leroux's novel will hopefully carry on for another 100 years. Next time you or a friend talks about reading some classics in horror fiction, remember the Phantom, and maybe you can help keep that flame alive. Next time, we take a trip south of the border for a forgotten Western gem, the Wrath of God. In the meantime, happy Halloween.